My name is Shawn and I am the host and creator of the Getting Out of Debt Show. Wanted to thank you for tuning in. To everyone that's new, I created this show because I want to help people that want to pay off debt or are struggling to pay off debt. And I want to do that by having guests on the show that have actually paid off debt or are in the process of doing it. I think that in today's media in personal finance, a lot of it is focused on sharing stories of people in financial chaos. And so I want to share stories of people that have actually gotten out of the chaos in order to inspire others to get out of debt and ultimately live a better life. And so I've got a lot of great guests lined up that I'm recording this week with on the podcast. But in the meantime, I wanted to record my actual story. So I've got a pretty crazy debt payoff story, but again, I feel like I'm just an average person, and me and my wife, I think we accomplished something pretty special when it comes to debt payoff. So here's my story. So my name is Shawn. I am 28 years old, and when I was 21 years old, I found myself in $50,000 of debt. So here's how it started. So I went to college just because I was told that was normal and what everyone has to do. And so I went to an in-state school, and my first freshman year, I racked up $20,000 in loans. Myself, like a lot of people, the price of schooling was entirely on me, which at the time I was mad for, but now looking back on it, I am incredibly grateful that all of it was on my back to pay for school. And so my freshman year, I racked up $20,000 in loans, and most of my courses were gen eds. So I was like, what the heck did I just spend $20,000 on? I've literally learned nothing. And so I realized that if I just stayed the course, I'm going to graduate with $80,000 in debt, which would be very close to crippling for someone at my age, and very hard to mentally just make the battle to pay it off. And so what I did was I became a resident assistant, which means I was responsible for looking over the freshmen my sophomore and junior year, and for that I got free room and board, which brought my cost for tuition, room, and board down to about $8,000 a year. And then what I did was all the money I made during the summer, which was only a couple $1,000, I used that to put towards my tuition costs for the year. So all in all, I was able to actually be in school for about $4,000 a year is what I had to get loans for. And that was living on my own in an in-state university. And so, one of the things that also, scared me was that if I lose this resident assistant job for any reason, that I'm going to be on the hook I'm going to have to take out another $15,000 in debt. And so I decided that I want to graduate in the fastest way possible. And I discovered a little loophole in the college system. And the loophole is when it comes to paying for tuition, everyone pays the same, regardless if you take 12 credits or 20 credits. And so every year, I took 20 credits. I just took as many classes as I could. I didn't really care what grades I got in them. I always got like B's. I'm going to throw a C in there. Lucky if I got an A, but I was taking classes that were ultimately going to help me graduate early, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to get my bachelor's and get out. And so I was able to do that in about 3 years total. I graduated with $30,000 in student loans, which at the time to me sounded like a lot of money because the most money I've ever had to my name was probably $6,000, and I felt rich at that. So 30 grand just seemed very hard to do. But I made a decision that I was going to pay all of these off because I knew that as I got older, my expenses were only going to go up, and now is the best time to knock off this debt. And two, I think my interest rate was like 6%. So 6% on 30,000 was like $1,800 going towards interest every year, which for me was like 3 paychecks. So I'm like, I don't want to do that. On top of that, I was also told it was normal to get a new car when you graduate because you got to have a nice, reliable car to go to work. So I financed a brand new Honda Civic. So here I am, age maybe 21, I forget, $50,000 in debt. And I'm like, this sucks. I'm like $50,000 in debt. How did this even happen? But student loans and car debt does it. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to pay off the $30,000 in student loans. And so my first job I got was working in recruiting and staffing, and every week my after-tax paycheck was $700. I lived at home with mom and dad to save on housing costs, and my diet was not that good because I kind of just survived on like granola bars and what was ever in the refrigerator. Even when I went to work, I would take as many clients out to lunch as possible so that I could get lunch paid for, because I knew that was probably the best nutrition I was going to get during the whole day, maybe the whole week. And so here was my strategy. I never kept more than $1,000 in my checking account. I didn't want more than that. I didn't have a credit card at the time, so $1,000 was, hey, that's what I'm living off of. Every single time I got a paycheck, as soon as that paycheck hit on a Friday, bam, schedule a debt payment, like all of it. So like if I got $700 paycheck, $700 was going towards the loans. And so I did the math. I'm like, hey, if I do this for 10 months, I'm done. And that's what happened. I did it for 10 months and the student loans were gone. And I remember I was sitting on the back deck when I made that final payment, and it was just like the best feeling in the world. I made a payment and that was it. Student loans were gone forever. Never had to worry about them again. And it was just such a good feeling. Now I still had this car debt that I wanted to tackle. But my payment I think was only like $400 a month. And at that time, I decided I want to start my own company. I've always been entrepreneurial and a little stupid. And so I left a very stable corporate job to go on this adventure of starting a company. And this was a commission-based role. Again, I was still living at home, so it was easy for me to save on housing costs, which I know is that's a lot for most people. But over the next year, I was able to save up about $30,000 from what I've made in the business. And I used that to just walk in the credit union and say, how much do I owe on my car? Wrote a check for it, done. So I was about 21 years old, or I'd say like 22 years old, and I had paid off the $50,000. And that's when things got fun, because for the past 2 years, I've been so disciplined with paying debts. I had the discipline now to save that money. And so the money was able to just really start stacking my bank account, and it was really exciting to watch. And I think 6 months later, I was able to put a down payment on a house, and we lived in there while my wife finished up graduate school. And my wife graduated at age 25 with about $60,000 in student loans. But that wasn't an issue because she went to school to become a physician associate, which will provide a life term or a full life of good income. Not like me being an idiot. I went to school, didn't even really know what for. Ended up getting an interdisciplinary studies degree. People make fun of me for it all the time. I completely agree with it. I make fun of myself. But I basically took a business degree and a biology degree, smacked them into two, and it got me out of school. But nonetheless, her $60,000 in debt, I didn't view as bad debt. That was a good investment. But nonetheless, interest rate on it was about 6%. So 6% of $60,000 is about $3,600 a year. So, that was a lot of money every year going towards air interest, nothing. And not to mention, like, the minimum payment every month was like $650. And that was for 10 years if we just stuck with the minimum payment method. So we decided we're going to pay this off as fast as possible. And so we did what I had done before for the prior debt. I left $1,000, maybe more, maybe a little bit more in our checking account. And that's what we survived with. As soon as we got paychecks in, whatever we didn't need for the mortgage or any other bills, we immediately just put on the debt. And so we were able to pay about, I'd say like anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 a month towards this debt, depending on my income, because again, I was in a commission-based role. But it sucked because $60,000 after 2 months went down to like 52, which was progress, but again, it didn't seem like a lot. One thing we did to make it easier was her $60,000 in student loans were broken into 4 different loans. Smallest one was 5. I think the biggest one was 20. And so psychologically, it was easier for us to start on the smallest loan of $5,000. And so when we paid off our smallest loan, it was a nice win. Hey, that debt's gone. Let's work on the next one. So from 60 to 50 felt impossible. Eventually, it went from like 50 to 35,000. We're like, hey, we're actually making some serious headway on this. And then it went from 35 to 20. And when we got about to 15, I had a big commission check I've been working months on come in, and that wiped it clean. All in all, it took about a year and a half to pay off that 60,000, and it was the best feeling in the world, because one of two things. Number one, we were free of all our consumer debt, student loans, car loans. We still had a mortgage. But number two, I was excited because even though we really didn't have a lot of cash to our name, I knew that in 3 years we had paid off about $110,000. So if we take that same discipline and put it towards investing in like the stock market or rental properties, it should get really exciting really fast. And it did. So I was very grateful that I went through this debt payoff journey because, number one, it taught me the value of money. It was so hard to go to work, make that money, and put it towards debt that, we never want to go back in debt, ever, for anything. And I think that's going to save us hundreds of thousands of dollars over our lifetime, is anytime we make a financial decision, we're looking at it through the eyes of people who have gone through the process of paying off bad debt and good debt, but we know how hard it is. And so a little term that I use is I think we have something called financial PTSD. Anytime that we think about financing things like a car, we go back to, well, how long did it really take to pay off that one loan for $25,000? Oh my God, it took like 8 months. So it's like, do we really want to spend 8 months worth of hard-earned savings to pay off something that's going to depreciate in value? No, we don't want to do that. And so that's why I'm grateful we went through the journey, because it's kind of changed our outlook on money. And one thing I've learned talking to a lot of people who have gone through debt payoff is they go on to build tremendous wealth because the same thing has happened to them. They've learned the discipline of saving and the discipline of how hard it is to pay off debt. So in turn, they avoid bad debt. And so that's why, I talked about it earlier. I'm grateful that I didn't have any money given to me to go to college, because it taught me how expensive an education really is, and it helped me because I had to be creative and innovative to get out of debt, or get out of school with the smallest amount of debt. So another thing that we learned through going through this debt payoff journey is, number one, it's extremely lonely. Pretty much everyone that I knew at the time was just making the minimum payment on their debt. And that's fine too for people that want to do that. But I couldn't really talk to this about anyone like that was going through a similar thing. Like I knew no one who was going through accelerated debt payoff. And a lot of people that are going through debt, I tell them to expect this. I said, in the beginning, you're going to have a lot of supporters, which we had. But towards the end, when we actually got out of debt, we got a bunch of negative comments like, oh, must be nice. And these people that were supporting us now are saying, making us feel bad that we did it. So going through debt payoff is a very lonely process, and it's going to be hard to find people that have also done it, because it's not something that a lot of people are going to talk about, I think, because a lot of people are going to put them down for it. That's just what I found. And so that's why I started this show, because I want people to hear other people's stories who have gotten out of debt. And eventually the company that I'm building now, I want to create a community where people can talk to other people who are going through accelerated debt payoff, so that they can share their wins, their struggles of it, and just talk to people, because I think that makes the process a lot more easy. When you see other people making progress or hitting big road, setbacks, I think it just makes it easier to go through. One thing I've learned, and the last thing I'll share by going through this process, is having no debt in life is the absolute best thing ever. And I have a mortgage. I consider that good debt. But in terms of having no bad debt in life, it is so amazing to not have payments. And money that would be going towards interest is now going towards our investments, which is compounding our wealth and ultimately accelerating an early retirement, which is super important for us. And so, my mission is to help people pay off debt, inspire them to pay off debt, because I just know through my own experiences that paying off debt is one of the best things you can do. And to this day, I've never met someone who said, man, I regret paying off my debt. And so that's why I kind of want to dedicate my life to helping people do this. and getting out of debt and living a better life. So that's it for this episode. I have 2 recordings set up with people this week who are absolute beasts when it comes to paying off debt, and I'm looking forward to sharing their stories as well. So thanks to everyone that watches and supports. Until next time.